Well, I see you just can't get enough Nuclear Blast metal. Well, that's just fine, because I feel the same way. Hey, this is Drucifer, host of the Nuclear Podblast, and happy to be back and talking all things Nuclear Blast and heavy metal. This is the first episode of 2019. I look forward to another amazing year from Nuclear Blast, and once again, I appreciate the North American office for giving me the opportunity to host the show. Our guests on this episode of the Podblast include the one and only Wolf Hoffmann from Accept, as well as guitarist and songwriter David Anderson of Soilwork. The latest Soilwork album, Verkligheten, came out on January 11th, and the band are touring Europe as we speak and have some dates in Japan coming as well in March. Now, this is the first time I've spoken with David, and it was great to hear his opinions and views on the band and the new album. Did you know that he's a medical doctor as well? Yeah, crazy. Accept are hot on the heels of the new Symphonic Terror Live at Wacken 2017 release, and I actually got to speak to Wolf the week of the album's release, which was in late November, so the interview was done a while ago, and it also took place just about a week before the announcement that longtime Accept bass player Peter Baltes was leaving the band. So obviously there were no questions regarding that topic, but as always, a great interview from Wolf Hoffmann. The guy has just a commanding voice and presence. We've got brand new Nuclear Blast metal from thrash titans Overkill and the new Wings of War album, operatic metal giants Avantasia, an early classic from Meshuggah, as well as a track off the new album from Germany's Nailed to Obscurity. We'll take a look at the upcoming North American tour dates for Nuclear Blast artists, and of course give you all the Nuclear Blast releases coming in February and March. Now, the passing of drummer Ted McKenna a few weeks ago on January 19th was a big shock to the music world. He was a young 68 and a part of the Michael Schenker Fest album and tour of last year, and he was planning on being a part of the upcoming spring tour, as well as the next album, which was recently announced on Schenker's 64th birthday. So our condolences to his family, friends, and bandmates, as he also played with the late and legendary Rory Gallagher before joining MSG, and he was a member of the sensational Alex Harvey Band before that. And it's just sad news, the passing of Ted McKenna. We'll kick off this edition of the Nuclear Podblast with a track from the Bay Area, California's technical extreme act Aenimus, whose second album, Dreamcatcher, comes out on February 22nd. This is Before the Eons, and welcome back to the Nuclear Podblast.
You're not a person, This is the Nuclear Podblast.
The Wings of War, the brand new Overkill record coming out on February 22nd. That track is Head of a Pin, a nice, slow, grindy track from the Thrash Titans. The album's great, man, top to bottom. Jason Bittner, who of course was on the last episode of the Nuclear Podblast, fitting in perfectly well, adding a great bass for a band that's obviously been doing it right for so long. And how about that announcement with them and Death Angel going out on the road together soon? Before that, you heard from Aenimus, Before the Eons, and their new album Dreamcatcher out February 22nd as well. Drucifer here with the Nuclear Podblast. Thanks as usual for checking in. Our interview with the one and only Wolf Hoffman from Accept coming up in just a couple minutes. Let's run down some releases for the Nuclear Blast North American roster. Of course, the Soilwork and Nailed to Obscurity records came out on January 11th. If you missed it, Nuclear Blast just reissued 3 classic Blind Guardian titles, Imaginations from the Other Side, Nightfall in Middle-earth, and A Night at the Opera, all remixed and come in the 2 CD format as well as black and colored vinyl. On February 8th, the Beast in Black album From Hell with Love is unleashed upon the world, and Moonglow, the brand new album from Avantasia, February 15th. That's going to be huge. Once again, Overkill's The Wings of War out February 22nd, as well as the Aenimus record Dreamcatcher. And March 1st brings 3 classic Nightwish reissues, including Dark Passion Play, Once, and Made in Hong Kong. And on March 8th, of course, Hexed, the 10th album from Children of Bodom, will be released. And don't forget that Alexi Leho will be our featured guest on the next episode of the Nuclear Podblast. Now, as mentioned, I spoke with Wolf Hoffmann from Accept the week that the new Symphonic Terror album was released in late November. It's been 3 years since I've had a chance to interview him, and he's always amazing to listen to. Expect more of the live Accept shows with an orchestra coming up, as you'll hear. And I also asked him about when we can expect another studio album from the band. So without further ado, it's Drucifer back with the Nuclear Podblast. Wolf Hoffman on the line with us. Wow, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out, and congratulations on the new Symphonic Terror live at Wacken 2017 release. Congrats.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Drucifer. I love it.
I'm actually heading to the record store, my local store, after we're done speaking to purchase my copy because I haven't had time over the last couple of days. So it's only early afternoon here right now, so I'm going to go do that when we're done.
As you should, as everyone should.
The combination of yourself and classical music goes back more than 20 years with the classical album that was released in 1997, and of course more recently with 2016's Headbangers Symphony album. However, combining the band Accept with classical music is something different. So at what point did you realistically start to put this in motion?
About a year prior to the actual show. The first step was that we were invited by Wacken to perform some songs of that Headbanger Symphony album, sort of like a world premiere with an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
That yes, because that was my idea all along. As soon as I made that album, I thought, wow, it would be cool to perform that somewhere. And of course, what better place than Wacken, the biggest metal festival in the world.
That's right, in your hometown, or no, your homeland, so.
Yeah,
perfect.
That's right, the fatherland.
Yeah.
That's right. So that was the first step, and I said yes, of course, immediately. And then it also coincided with the release of the Accept album, The Rise of Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Then we said, oh, wow, it would be cool to play some new songs of that album and present that new album at the same time. And then we had those 2 parts. We had the band Accept there, and we had an orchestra there, and then somebody was smart enough to suggest, well, why don't you play some Accept songs with that orchestra? And that is something we never even thought about until that moment. And I was initially, I didn't know what to think because I hadn't heard it. I thought those were 2 different worlds and maybe they shouldn't mix. But I said, let's try it out and let's see how it goes. And so I sat down in the studio for several weeks and we went through the songs with my buddy Melo Mafali, the amazing arranger. And we wrote some arrangements that we both liked. And that is what you hear on this album.
Well, I read where you were still nervous just a few minutes before the live recording, and I was wondering if that was because you weren't 100% sure, like you said, about all Accept fans, like everyone would enjoy that accompaniment, or were you more concerned about the actual performances and the production of the show?
Yeah, it was mostly the production and the performance, because this is something we'd never done before.
Right.
A regular Accept show, I even get nervous sometimes then, because you don't really know. You haven't played in a while, or you're playing new songs or something. You don't know always, it's not like everything is routine, but sure, be on stage with 50 people and to perform a set we've never done before. Yeah, of course, that makes it kind of nervous, because you don't know if you're going to make a fool out of yourself, or if your pants fall down. I mean, anything could happen, really, but luckily it went so smooth. It was really one of the best days of my life.
Well, watching the videos the last few days leading up to this, it seems like, as you're saying, you're nervous, but everybody seemed to be having a good time, smiles everywhere, so that was great to see. Awesome.
Once you go on stage and you get, then you start feeling at home, and the nervousness goes away like that. But it's usually just before the show, and I don't even have a good explanation for it, because it's nothing that I'm really afraid of or whatever, but it's just part of a good nervousness. It's always been there, and I think maybe that's even a good thing. Maybe as soon as you lose that, you don't give a damn anymore, but we certainly still give a damn, so maybe that's why we're nervous. I don't know.
It keeps you on your toes.
I guess.
Well, before even recording, the classical record 20 years ago, how far back does your appreciation for classical music actually go?
Much, much further back, because, I've been dabbling with classical music ever since I picked up guitar. But then, of course, I performed and played and wrote nothing but metal for forever and ever, until one day I had the idea to maybe stick a little piece of a classical melody in one of the Accept songs, and that was Metal Hard in 1985. And so it goes way back, the whole idea of incorporating little elements of classical music into our stuff. Even apart from that, we've always had certain core elements of our songs that were classically inspired in a way. We never really went as far as taking complete pieces or whatever, but a lot of our melodies, even in songs like Fast as a Shark and stuff, they sound like they could be from a classical piece, but they were not. It's just sort of in our blood, or in my blood, the way that I write stuff. A lot of times it comes out sounding a little bit classical. I think it has something to do with the fact that we are from Europe, that we're from Germany, and it's somehow more, at least when I was growing up, it was everywhere. In my household, with my parents, they on TV, on radio, there was a lot of classical music everywhere.
Well, to me, the orchestra's performance on Symphonic Terror is pretty much an enhancement to your songs. It still sounds like Accept, performing, the band's music, but in a different atmosphere. And at times, the band actually sounds heavier than I'm used to hearing it. And maybe that's actually the contrast of the two that you were talking about originally. Do these two things actually go together?
Well, that was my goal and my hope when I sat down to work on these arrangements. My criteria was, is this going to enhance everything, or are those two elements fighting each other? Mm-hmm. And that's not what I wanted, obviously. I didn't want to have like the orchestra fight the band, or the band fight the orchestra, and I didn't want to have the orchestra just in the background all the way back playing some stuff that nobody can hardly hear, so almost like a keyboard part that is just under everything. I didn't want that either. I wanted the orchestra to play almost on the same level as the band, so where it's a give and take, between two equally important partners, basically.
From the live Symphonic Terror record right there, it's Drucifer here in the Nuclear Podblast, and Wolf Hoffman still with us. Thanks, man.
You bet. My pleasure.
All of the 4 studio albums with the current lineup have done well worldwide, and all have gone top 10 in Germany, along with the amazing #1 for Blind Rage. Well, tell us what we can expect and when we can expect a new studio album from Accept.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't quite know that, but we're going to start for I mean, we have started a little bit here and there and written some songs and sort of put them in the drawer, but at some point we have to lock the doors, turn off the phones, and really, go to town on these songs and actually create an album. It's something that's really hard to do sort of along the way on the road. It's almost like you have to set aside a few months of your time, stop touring, and do nothing else but crank out that record, and that'll happen sometime next year. So I'm looking. Realistically, I think we're looking at a 2020 release. So maybe getting together and writing a new record after the tour for in taking the symphony on the road. Exactly, yeah. Okay, great. Well, man, thanks again for taking the time. Congratulations on the new live record. Such an undertaking finally coming to fruition for you, and now the fans get to hear it. So appreciate your time and congratulations. I'm so glad it's finally out because, we've been, it's been sitting here for a little while. So can't wait for everybody to see it and to experience it. Wolf Hoffman, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, man. We'll see you on the road, okay? All right, my man. All right, take care. You too.
Thanks for checking out the Nuclear Podblast. Music to mangle your minds.
That was Germany's Nailed to Obscurity, and their fifth album, Black Forest, was released on January 11th, and that was the title track here on the Nuclear Podblast with Drucifer. You can make fun of that name, because, I do. Nailed to Obscurity is playing dates in Germany, Belgium, London, France, Spain, and Italy in the month of February. Let's hope we see them on this side of the Atlantic sometime soon. A big thanks to Wolf Hoffman again from Accept for joining us back when Symphonic Terror was released. And like he said, hopefully we can see a new Accept record sometime in the next year or two. And I was lucky enough to promote no less than 5 Soilwork records during my time working promotions for Nuclear Blast. But that was several years ago, and the band lineup has changed quite a bit since then. In fact, I think Bjorn is the only original member that's left from my time working with the band. Anyway, it was great to speak with David Anderson for the first time. Not only is he an incredible guitarist, but he and Bjorn co-wrote the entire new album together. Now, those two have found some incredible success with their other band, Night Flight Orchestra, but I didn't ask much about that, as nothing can overshadow how great this new Soilwork record is. Now, David is a pretty soft-spoken guy, and he seems to choose his words carefully, which I think made for a pretty great conversation about Verkligheten. It's Drucifer back with the Nuclear Podblast, and we've got David Anderson with us from Soilwork. David, thanks so much for taking the time, and congratulations on an amazing new record.
Thank you.
And please, go ahead and pronounce the record, because I'm failing every time I try.
Verkligheten.
Verkligheten.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, the album was just released. This is the longest time taken between albums for Soilwork. Now, judging by the album title and the song titles, it seems like the band is almost using the time between albums to somewhat reinvent itself, or perhaps to reassess the mindset of the band this far along. Would you shed some further light on the album and the song titles for us?
Yeah, sure. First of all, the reason it took a while between The Right Majestic and this album, the band did lots of touring for The Right Majestic, and then me and Bjorn have this other band called the Night Flight Orchestra, and we did 2 albums in the meantime, and none of us are getting any younger, so I guess we have a lot of other stuff to take care of as well, and so we didn't really mean to take this long between albums, but I guess as you grow older, time goes faster, and I guess it was kind of a good thing that we had some time to talk about the themes and concepts and discussing where we wanted to take, which direction we wanted to take musically and thematically with Soilwork. And me and Bjorn Street, the singer, me and him, we wrote all the songs for this album, and I guess the overall concept is about various aspects of reality. Verkligheten is a Swedish word for reality, but reality is quite a boring title, and it sounds a bit more interesting in Swedish, I guess. And it's something it's a talking point, and hopefully something that will make people a bit curious. And the overall theme of the album is about how your perception of reality changes as you grow older. You start to get conscious of your own mortality, and your anxieties and fears are a bit different, and you also have this need to try to find ways to escape reality. So the album is a lot about how you handle your own reality changing, and the places you go to inside yourself and outside yourself to try to escape from those obvious facts that are sometimes quite painful, I guess.
Right. You mentioned that you and Bjorn wrote the entire record, and that was actually part of my next question, was just you guys, just the two of you involved. What did you find out about working with each other? Was it maybe a little easier than you thought it would be, tackling the album, just the two of you, or maybe a little harder?
It wasn't. We have Sven, our keyboard player, and Sylvain, the other guitar player. They're both great songwriters, and it wasn't like me and Björn said, okay, we're going to write this album all by ourselves. They didn't have any songs.
Okay.
So
it's the truth, right?
Yeah, I guess me and Björn, we've always writing songs. I mean, we have our other band, the Night Flight Orchestra, and I've always been a songwriter in every band I've ever been in, and it's songwriting is like a muscle. You need to flex it.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's going to go limp.
Well, from the first track, the opening track and first video single, Arrival, there's just an avalanche of sound and emotion. Blast beat drumming, along with like a sheer wall of melodies coming at you. It's as if the full range of the band is being shown at the very first few moments of the new album.
When you're entering the studio, you never know how songs will turn out. So that was just one song among all the others. But when we finished it, it felt like a great opener, and it sort of like sums up what the whole album is about musically, with those layers of melodies and that combining the extreme metal elements with more classic old school metal stuff. Or like musical vision of this album was combining all those elements that you usually associate with melodic death metal and like sort of reassembling them in a new way, and that's something that we've been going this direction ever since I joined the band for the Living Infinite, like trying to have very melodic parts and having blast beats underneath it, or doing more old school hard rock metal stuff with scream vocals, or just like taking it somewhere else.
Yeah, there's a lot of different moods on this record, so I think that definitely comes through. We talked about a few songs earlier, Bleeder to Spoiler, the second full song on the album, just an immediate hook and a great standout track, but also another single, Full Moon Shoals, displays the album's total diversity, super melodic opening and structure, but again, once we get to the bridge, there's, it's blistering thrash metal. So it definitely shows the variety of this record. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess that's like the challenge playing metal these days, or writing metal songs. It's that genre. Metal has become such a diverse genre, and there are so many bands out there playing various kinds of metal, and but they often stick to like their own subgenre, and I mean, when you have a band like Soilwork that's been around for like more than 20 years, you can't really write a bossa nova or jazz album. You need to play some sort of metal. We always try to create music that hasn't been done before. Mm-hmm. That's like that's our goal, to surprise people, and that might also be like, it's both a blessing and a curse, I guess, because I mean, we could have written new Stabbing the Dramas for every album. Perhaps we'd have been much bigger.
Figure number 12.
Career-wise, then we could have just gone along and try to like duplicate that and try to build on what already existed. But we always like rip up the foundation and try to build something new each time we do an album, and that's what's exciting about being in Soilwork. But at the same time, it's probably not always a smart move career-wise, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right then, my blood was the sunrise. My soul
back with David Anderson from Soilwork. David, we talked it's come up a couple of times already about Night Flight Orchestra, your other band with Bjorn. Obviously, that band has blown up. So are you finding it harder and harder to find time to actually do both bands now?
Yeah, of course. I'm also, outside of playing music, I'm also a doctor or a physician.
I was going to ask about that as well, about your third career, your other career.
It's of course it's getting more and more difficult. I have to sit out a few tours every now and then, and it is what it is. It's easier if you're like 22 and single, and none of us are, and it's constant juggling, and it's still really stimulating and enjoyable to be able to create music and to be able to play in bands like the bands I'm playing in. Mm-hmm. If you get a chance to write music and then having musicians like the guys in Soilwork and vocalists like Björn singing your songs, it's every songwriter's wet dream, I guess.
Well, I know, speaking of guitar players and influences, I know a couple of your bigger guitar influences are guys like Neil Young and Tommy Bolin. Do you put more faith in players who have a greater sense of melody and space as opposed to how many notes you can cram into a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. How much time do we have? No, but I guess when I grew up, of course, I was a big fan of all the first generation of shred guitarists.
Sure.
I think these days, if you listen to the modern shred kind of guitar players, it's kind of too. Personally, I prefer, if I hear a guitar solo, I want it to make me itch a bit. Guitar solo should be uncomfortable. So the older I get, the more I tend to gravitate towards players that are sort of like, you should feel some pain when you hear a guitar solo. So
that makes sense.
I really like Neil Young and Tom Bolin. People like Steve Hackett, the old Genesis records, and Steve Howe, the guitar player,
of course.
and like Jay Maskis, the Dinosaur Jr.
Dinosaur, and Witch.
And I really enjoy. Someone like Saint Vincent, Anna Clark.
Yes,
she's a fantastic guitar player.
She's amazing. Yeah.
She's like from that old, almost new wave school with like Adrian Belew and Sonic Youth, and music shouldn't make it too comfortable.
Now, I know the band is touring throughout Europe late January for a month or so. It looks like you've got some Japan dates in March. But when will you support the new record here in North America?
Well, honestly, I don't know. The band did quite a few tours for the last album, and we're just waiting for offers. We're just a band. We don't get to decide much. It's always great to play North America, and I've had some of my most enjoyable experiences touring the US. So we're just hoping that everyone over there will support us, and that there's still an interest for us coming over.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed for a tour announcement soon. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Well, David Anderson, thank you so much for taking the time on the Nuclear Podblast. Congratulations on the new Soilwork record out now. And we hope to see you here in North America soon enough, all right?
Yeah, super. Nice talking to you.
You too, man. Take care.
Wishing you my bleeding spoiler.
This is the Nuclear Podblast.
Inside What's Beneath Behind, Meshuggah from Destroy, Erase, Improve, 1995, the band's breakthrough full-length record. We talked about it on the last episode of the Podblast. The Meshuggah vinyl reissues are out now, a one-time issue of all of their records, man. Again, Contradictions, Destroy, Erase, Improve, Chaosphere, Obzen, Catch 33 even, Kolos, Nothing, The Violent Sleep of Reason. Go get them now before they're gone. Thanks again to David Anderson from Soilwork. We're anxiously awaiting to hear when the band will return to North America. From the new record Verkligheten, you heard Bleeder to Spoiler, as well as the first single and opening track Arrival. Loving the diversity on the new Soilwork record. And again, on the next episode of the Nuclear Podblast, we'll have Alexei from Children of Bodom as our featured guest. And who knows who else? You never know. We'll run down the tours for the North American Nuclear Blast artists. Now, I just caught the COC tour last week at the Gothic Theater in Denver, Colorado, with Crowbar, Weed Eater, and Mothership. Killer package, of course. The Obsessed are actually joining the tour later in place of Weed Eater, I believe. But everybody had killer sets, especially since all the bands had to brave a snowstorm to get to the show in Denver, with Weed Eater literally showing up minutes before going on stage. Now, COC only played one new song off of No Cross, No Crown, as drummer Reed Mulling is sitting out this run of dates due to some health issues with his knees, and his tech is sitting in and doing a fantastic job. Tour wraps up in New Orleans on March 1st. Now, Soulfly will begin their North American campaign to support the Ritual album on January 25th at the Sunshine Theater in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the tour ends in Los Angeles on February 26th. Cataclysm and Incite will be the support acts for the entire tour, with some rotating opening bands depending on what market you're in. Children of Bodom, Swallow the Sun, and Wolfheart will be going out on the road together with rotating support acts as well. Bodom's 10th studio album, Hexed, comes out on March 8th. And of course, the wild child himself, Alexei Leho, will be our featured guest on the next episode of the Podblast. That tour begins March 13th in Quebec and wraps up April 19th in New York City at Irving Plaza. What a great venue. Sweden's Graveyard will kick off their co-headlining tour with Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats on March 6th in Philadelphia. There's 19 dates total, ending in Toronto on March 30th. That tour will sell out in a lot of those venues. What a great pairing for this co-headlining tour. Now, the tour poster design is being sold as a t-shirt as well. Check that out if you haven't already. It's the Peace Across the Wasteland Tour 2019. Now, Graveyard are also returning to the States in August as a part of this year's Psycho Las Vegas Fest. As mentioned earlier, Overkill and Death Angel are teaming up for a North American run kicking off April 25th and running through May 11th. Now, Act of Defiance are the opening act on the entire tour. What a damn fine bill that is. Now, we talked earlier about the new Avantasia record, Moonglow, which will be out on February 15th. Now, Tobias Sammet, the master and brain behind Avantasia all these years, was quoted as saying, "I really can't wait to unleash Moonglow. First reactions by press and friends are the most enthusiastic comments I have ever gotten in my whole career of 27 years. No bullshit, it's the truth." End quote. So there you go. Tobias is super excited about the record. Hope you are as well. This track here, time-wise, rivals the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So get set for this one. This is the Raven Child closing out this episode of the Nuclear Podblast, and Drucifer thanking you once again for being so damn metal.
Wild grove, sacred grounds, fade to vastness. Mother Moon, cast your spell on these fields. Let the boughs paint ghostly shades on the trail to a different world,
where the castle looks out to the valley, where I'm given all the love that I crave, not afraid of the rising sun, laying bare my brittle soul.
Cold is the wind, bringing forth clarity, time rushing on, and nothing will remain. There's no glory on the lost journey.
down from this pure cup of heaven onto an ocean of white that drowns all the noise and the crazy and empty eyes. Wide-eyed I'm lost in my imagination. I dream of love, I've got to suffocate while I keep on waiting for the hour I'll be called to realize and see it all before my eyes. The sky is crawling down the mound into the dark wood on the ground. I say specters flare and spin and rise to mingle with the skies and take all that's never meant to be. A fire in the dark for the fool's gonna find his way, gonna run and never get away. Is it love that glows in fiery alignment? Story-eyed, living a lie, a lonely heart and an endless line. Bewildering and strange, the scent of spring and cherry blossoms, sweet scent of rain. They're calling you, astounding how it is not the same it used to be when you're compelled behind the cradle on your own. The tolling of the bell, is there anyone to tell me what they want to say? Voices go on and on and talk to me, but their tongues won't permeate throughout my soul. In your altered state of mind, in vain you're chasing lies. Yeah, your master in his frown, denial of the crown of creation. You're made to think you are. A fire in the dark for the fool's gonna find his way, gonna run and never get away. Is it love that glows in fiery alignment? A fire in the dark for the fool's gonna find his way, gonna run and never get away. Is it love that glows in fiery alignment? Story-eyed, living a lie, lonely heart in an endless light breeze and the crowns of the willows, green fields as if the day was on the wane, grow faint and attain to perfection. What a backdrop for a diamond. So we sway in the wind like the willow, meant to give way to the odor of the storm. Won't leave a mold in the marsh of the ages, a tight chevalier of fortune.
Blue and serene, once the sky swung on magic. The unborn destiny. Time flows to become a mound of nothing for a broken soldier of fortune.
Thanks for checking out the Nuclear Podblast. Music to mangle your minds.